seating of the trees.
Okay.
I guess the next one has a little bit more than this one.
Any more questions on Plan B going forward? Is there any public that wants to give a comment on Plan B?
I have one question, Larry. You were saying this would probably be the cheapest, Jeff, what's your price tag on this for sale? Or did you get that far?
I did not do a construction cost estimate on it right now,
So just from
but
your
I would expect $150,000 to $200,000.
For the whole thing?
But you mentioned this plan here is a lot less money than A, and we don't know what, we have a comment.
If you were going to remodel this entire space, you're probably talking $300,000. If you took Plan A, you're probably closer to the $200,000 range. This particular one, you're probably closer to $150,000 to $180,000.
And if we just did the board chambers portion?
That would be just the board chambers,
Oh,
those items.
Okay.
You gotta keep in mind, you're gonna be revising your heating and air conditioning. There are existing units there, but you're gonna have to upgrade some of them because of the increased number of people in this space. You're gonna have to have new flooring, and you're gonna have wall finishes, which you'll have to do with inline.
On the layout of the conference room, you obviously put it on the right-hand corner versus the left side.
That's correct. The intent here was to get closer to this access door for the supervisors, if you did get into closed session, but also because of the lighting. You have a couple windows there. for the light.
Thanks. Jean?
Yeah, a quick question. So just for the construction costs, you're talking 150 to 200 just to do the chambers there.
That's correct.
What about then the seating and the furnishings? Is that extra?
That would have to be extra.
So what in your experience do you envision a room for 85 people costing for furnishings and, furniture and around?
The seating here for the board chambers would be included in that. I would include that cabinet too, okay? As far as this stuff here, you could probably spend 15 to 20,000 unless you use these.
Maybe to start with, we could.
We'll just spray paint them pink.
Well, there's a point at which, it's
Well, they've held up
a
for
possibility.
65 years.
That's right.
Go for another 65 years.
Okay, thank you.
Iona McCain. Could I ask him a question?
Sure, just as long as it's not about what money or we have or don't have, just keep it to the questions about.
He's gonna
design.
censor you.
It's not the.
He's gonna
public's,
censor you.
I have no idea, I just want to ask a question.
Okay. Oh, go ahead.
Can I? Okay. Jeff, have you ever considered, when you're going to get the building, right? You're going to tear down walls and things of that sort?
Yes.
Okay, and put up different arrangement floor plan? Have you ever thought about the hazardous materials that might be in that building, if there's mold or something like that?
That is a
Thank you.
possibility. Back in 2000, when it was demolished, this particular wall
Westwall?
was the west wall, west wall. Had some moisture. It was torn apart. There was some waterproofing put on the wall. And so there's always that possibility.
To answer a little bit further, we replaced carpet in that area a few years ago for the courts, and there appeared to be no moisture coming up from the floor, from underneath the concrete there, so it appears that it's staying dry.
Is it a cylinder block wall?
It is a
And
concrete block
is-
wall.
Yeah, concrete block. All right, have you checked that? As far as waterproofing?
It's furred out. It's got finish on it, so you can't actually get to that wall right now.
Okay, thanks.
I believe back in the 90s, sometime there was a huge renovation project because of the space being used even then by the courts early on. That caused everybody to have to move out into trailers into the parking area, and they went in and all the way back to, and they did have some mold issues and some other issues that were abated at that time, and they put in place, I guess, the newer improvements to minimize or to eliminate that problem in the future. So I guess the question is, were those improvements, are they still working or sufficient? I guess you'll find out if you dig in there, but if there isn't moisture coming in on
There hasn't been any sign of it, what's your
so
issue?
there was a point in time, I think it was back in around the mid-90s, where they had to move everybody out for like 6 or 8 months, and they went in and they had to do a whole bunch of stuff. Actually, by the time they got done, they had to redo the heating and cooling for the whole building. They had a flat roof before, they put on the current roof structure. I mean, there was a whole host of things, and I think we wound up, this is back in Bixby, was before they moved into the offices above, because the library vacated the space sometime in the mid-90s, and before it was all said and done with, the county spent close to $1 million refurbishing that building. And the question is, well, we could have torn it down and built a new one for maybe that much money, but anyway, that's what happened then.
Thank you.
Thanks. Any other comments? Jeff, I have a question. So on this Plan B there, up on the top side, those are behind the staff seating, those, do those represent windows on either side of that?
That's correct, there's existing windows there at this point.
Because the one thing we do need to make sure is we have adequate area solid for this type of thing, the dry erase board and a projector screen, and I don't really see where that would fit into that plan. That's very important.
That's correct. You probably would have to do it on the opposite wall along the corridor,
Yeah.
and in that case, you may want to switch where the staff and clerk is
Yeah.
up.
Right. So how many feet do you think that is then? I mean, there, because I don't really know what the scale is, but.
You have, between the door and where I show that 6-inch step is about 10 feet.
Okay. So we're using, a bit more than 10 feet there. Okay. All right. Any other comments on this one? Okay.
Plan C is very similar to Plan A. The only difference is there's a center aisle rather than 2 outside aisles.
I'm sorry, more
No, I thought you were concluding, but my comment was gonna be in line with what you just said. You know, inherently you have a problem where the board is looking in a diametrically opposed direction than the audience, and for the sake of displaying media, I just hope that something is taken into account as to where that's gonna be and how it's gonna serve both the board and the audience. Because that's a problem with any kind of boardroom. And, you know, you see other boardrooms spend a lot of money trying to figure out that problem by having individual stations in front of the board members and one main media center for the audience. And since we're eating this elephant one bite at a time, I think it's important that the initial steps kind of realize that, and it may not be for a long time until we get what we want, but we gotta have something functional as we go. So that's my comment, then we gotta go.
Thank you. Okay. Plan C?
Plan C is similar to Plan A, except the center, there's a center aisle rather than 2 outside aisles. Really, we brought the clerk and the staff closer to the board seat. Okay.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments on Plan C? Jean?
Jean Hodge, what would be your estimate on the cost of just doing the boardroom on Plan C?
It'd be the same as Plan A.
Okay, so about 150 to 200,000.
That's correct.
plus furniture.
Yes.
Jim?
Well, now that we have some plans to work at, obviously when we were over there with the space and the walls, it's kind of hard to visualize and visualize some of this. There's another alternative that I think that might be worth looking at, given either Plan A or C. I don't think it would be necessary. It could work possibly with Plan B, but we've got this idea that we're on one end of the room or the other, and it goes back to what Jeff said about the line of sight and so forth. And 49 feet basically, or 48 feet, that's a good distance when you're dealing with this space, which is 34 feet in terms of the length here. But what about the idea of possibly on would be the inside wall, where you have kind of behind where that area behind where the clerk sits, you have, that doorway that can go into that little cubicle that takes you into the corridor behind, but have the board seating in the middle of the room, and that way the staff would be sitting basically in front of them. It could be the area between it and where the windows and that side door is, and then have basically public seating on either side. So you're kind of more, instead of being the length of the room, you use it'd be like, this room would be a little bit shorter, staff would be here, but you would expand out on either side and having a wing. And then instead of having that doorway going into like where the conference room is, you could actually take that wall and extend it straight, and we have the electrical panel there, but you'd have that doorway be right behind it, board seating that would allow you to, go into and you wouldn't have to have that extra door over near the west wall. But in other words, just pivot so that the room is kind of, this is portrait, this becomes more landscape, I guess, using computer terms, as an option of how you can maybe maximize the use of the space and maybe maximize some seating capacity that way. I mean, here we got something to look at, that's just something that kind of jumped off at me. The variables are there, and I think they all have merit from one direction or another.
One of the advantages, it does split up your public seating areas, but the
Well, you would still have
advantage
public
would
seating
be,
going all the way around, it just that there would be a shorter sight distance between where the seating is and where the meeting is. It'd be like us having our dais over here and the seating would be like this.
right. What would be an advantage would be then the multimedia or display area is really visible by all.
But you would enhance that part, is for sure. Yeah, that's what, I could see that as being an option, but I think that would be one if we're looking at an alternative. But to be honest with you, going back to Plan B, which would be kind of resembling of the old chambers, but just bigger, I think surprisingly works well for me as well.
I'd like to, sorry.
Well, I have one other question, and it's still on topic, but it's off topic. Did we ever look at the courthouse, the old courtroom across the street upstairs? But the county clerk and the assessor, can we look at that one,
For what purpose?
the board chamber?
We didn't give it serious consideration because it's on the second floor.
Yeah, you'd have to develop elevator access for the building as a prerequisite to use it.
Would that be cheaper than this?
Elevators,
I don't know, I'm just,
There's a lot of them upstairs. I mean, we saw it regularly. People kick in the walls that are covered up with tape. Then you have upstairs in the hallway. Then we have the DA's office that just moved up right next door to that.
But the actual courtroom, I think, is in pretty good shape.
Courtroom itself it is, but it's
well,
the
that's what I'm
surrounding
saying,
area.
use the courtroom for the report.
But it's something we could certainly look into. It may be less expensive to put an elevator in than to.
but the elevator would almost have to be external.
If you didn't spend up to that amount of money though, you don't have to do all the AGM, you can go move over there next week, as long as you don't spend bucks. Only once you spend a certain amount of money, you have to go full AGM. anyway.
It may pose a
Well,
problem.
we're gonna have to meet again on this stuff, we'll talk about it then.
Well, I think if we have time, now that we have this, if we can
Right.
think about this between now and next Tuesday, so we can really
Yeah.
come up with some firm feedback.
Well, yeah, I'd like to propose that we, the Plan B seemed the most cost effective, if we can.
That's correct.
But we do need to come up with an idea. It doesn't provide really anything for this. I mean, that probably looks like about 11 foot or so. You said you have 10 feet here, but that's right up to the, I mean, that, you can't really, that's not gonna work right there for the media. I mean, so if there's a way, we need to address that with the Plan B. And then there's been some other suggestions that Pete has noted that we'll give to you. And then I think that we need to take all of those suggestions and this, and then we need to, then there was another thing that was discussed that you brought up that's not on the diagram.
And we could, we could take these with us, and maybe over the next few days, we can mark them up different ways, make copies and mark them up, and feed them into Pete, and then Pete can feed them into Jeff, and we can look at what variations could come up there.
Just so long as they're available for Thursdays, for the put online, so we can address it, because otherwise then we're gonna start having big gaps before we.
Well, I'm talking about us bringing this back next Tuesday, and then that's where we turn in our suggested type of changes and see what we can,
Or do you want those changes to go to Jeff and he brings the plans back with a little?
I think it's kind of too short a time to be able to do it between now and next Tuesday's meeting to revise the plan, but if we can mark these up and have them, I mean, it would be nice to get them to Pete ahead of time so he can, or to Susan or Richard, whoever, so the copies can be made, so everybody can have a copy. I can take this and maybe come up with a few modifications I would think would be possible to think about. And each of us can do that. But be prepared for next Tuesday to then take those and maybe zero in on what works and what doesn't work and what is a priority or preference versus something else. And by next Tuesday, hopefully we can narrow it down to being the preferred choice with whatever modification. Give that to Jeff and let him then prepare a revised scheme based on that.
And Jeff, would you just try it, maybe something, you get an idea that we don't have about Plan B, how to serve the media thing? I don't know.
Yes, I can do that.
Pull down the screen or something.
I think the clerk needs to be near staff and the board, because we're always passing things back and forth, instead of being,
She doesn't want to be in the middle and front, but she wants to be.
no, I want to be in the other room, but that doesn't work.
Well, maybe what
No, but to be near the
maybe
chairman.
we can accommodate her is Richard can move down one, and Retta can move down one, and Susan can sit where Retta's sitting.
Yeah, because you could have the clerk and council, mayor on one side and staff on
In
the
the
other.
in the historic old boardroom, the clerk sat on one side of the bench and the council sat on the other, but Susan told me that would work, as she likes talking to council.
And Jeff.
One of the comments about the courthouse is, again, the issue is always ADA accessibility. And so to get it to the second floor would require an elevator. An elevator, whether it was external or internal, the elevator itself is probably $70,000, but then you'd also have to do all the electrical work as well as the framework to house the elevator. And so once you start doing that, you could be up to $150,000,
I think
$200,000.
You
the city,
can't use just a block and that.
Nope. Sorry. And one of the issues you get into is once you go over about $150,000 to $170,000 threshold, then all your facility will begin to have to be upgraded for accessibility. From the street, restrooms, and everything. At this point in time, the courthouse is really not conducive to that, unless you were gonna do a major remodel.
I think when the city remodeled City Hall and they did, expanded it and did that, they put an elevator in there.
That's
And I
correct.
think it cost them over $200,000 if I recall. And that was like maybe 10 years ago.
Yeah. Eileen?
The ad for the task force came out in today's, but the description that you put in here doesn't seem to include this project.
No, it doesn't.
It now looks like, now it's what originally, I think the public was presented with. It was a task force being formed for this
No.
remodel.
There was two different things.
There's videotape. But it sounds like now this is all going to be done in-house without any public input whatsoever.
Okay, thank
Yeah.
you.
Am I misreading that?
Yeah. fair enough. So, I would like it if Jeff could take some of the comments that we've made, and if you have time to get it for Thursday, do a bit of tweaks to the plans.
Okay.
You know,
I can
and as
do
well
that.
as board members could write on theirs, but it'd be, I mean, some of the things we've discussed, if you can. And then, I would also like to suggest that we do it for 1 o'clock,
Yeah,
so Jeff doesn't have to.
right, make it a time certain.
And also we can have, you know, adequate time.
Let me address the comment so it can be on tape since it's been raised by the public. The issue of the boardroom remodeling or the boardroom project, it's kind of like the DA's moving from downstairs upstairs. That's a case specific as a project. It's not revamping Courthouse Square. The purpose of the task force is looking at a long-range plan for the revitalization of Courthouse Square. Of course, the boardroom is there just as county council's there, DA's there, county clerk's there, all the different offices. That's what the task force is going to be working on. And obviously, the task force is going to look at the work that's been done, would be done with a project like this, just like it has done, have been looking at all the other offices and the work that's been done in their environment. It may come back with a reorganization of the space. It may, you know, whatever they come up with, it's a much more of a global thing. This is kind of like a neighborhood thing as far as this project. So anybody who wanted to represent or misrepresent what the intent was, when I introduced both ideas on the same day, there were two separate actions and activities. One of them that we have an immediate need to do, and one of them is supposed to come back with a report by the end of 2015. I don't think we're interested in having this project be delayed until the end of 2015 as far as the larger space. I just want to make sure that's on tape so that it's a clarification. I don't like the representation of what I propose being manipulated by others who have maybe their ideas of what they'd like to have done. That's what I said and that's what I did, and it hasn't changed, and the ad in the paper should reflect that.
Thank you. Thanks for clearing that up. Kevin?
Yeah, a couple of things. As we take this home and mark it up, I would also ask like Susan and Red and Richard to also take a copy and mark it up so that you guys can fit your guys' needs as well. And then, just for clarification, not that I doubt you, Jeff, by any means, please don't assume that, like it's Richard or Keith, if you guys could just double check on the elevator thing, just to
Will do.
satisfy the curiosity.
Okay, thanks for that. So, we will resume then at this, take it up again next week, right, at 1 o'clock?
But this is a good start,
Yes,
Mr. Chairman. I
yes.
want to thank staff and state,
Yeah.
and thank Jeff for
Yeah,
getting us to a point where we could even have today's discussion.
yeah. And then, but hopefully next week we can go a long way into finalizing something. So, I think we're good. So we're gonna end here, and thanks, you, appreciate it. Thank you very much. So, let's, go right on into our, I think, capital improvement discussion, the plan is a good one to transition into.
Do you want to do the Big Valley One Stop, item 9?
Yeah, we'll go back to that.
Okay.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. What I presented to you today is a capital improvement plan that was proposed by prior County Administrative Officer Martin Nichols. It appeared on the agenda December 17th and in your packet, but due to the length of that meeting, it was pulled from the agenda. And so I'm bringing it back to you today to review. The plan essentially proposes to use balances in the accumulated capital outlay fund to make some improvements to several facilities and utilizing the ongoing revenue from that fund to purchase equipment like we have been doing, ongoing maintenance and an ADA compliance plan. In my view, the plan is a good start, and I think the county has been righteously criticized recently in the past for not having a plan, which is the duty of the county administrative officer, which I've been reminded of many times recently. And it is something that needs to be done. I don't really believe that this plan does justice to the long-term needs of the county's capital requirements in terms of financing those, and I tend to agree with Mr. Hodge this morning that we need to match the budget and the funding with the plan. I'd like to do that. That's going to take some time. I think in the interim, it would be a wise idea to adopt this plan and then immediately give direction to revise it so that we have a plan in place to start with and then work from that. If there's any questions, Peter, Larry, or I will try to answer them.
I have a question. So what, knowing that this is just like in the infant stages, so what would the reason be, instead of working on it for another 6 or 8 weeks and then adopting that, what's the reasoning behind going ahead and adopting this, even though knowing that it's, you know?
Sure, good question. And I guess I would envision that the long-term capital improvement plan is going to take some time to develop. It's, in my view, and if I'm wrong, tell me, it should involve perhaps several public meetings, involvement of all departments in the county to flesh out Supervisor Chapman's idea of building facilities on Courthouse Square, dealing with everything from a Roosevelt facility to the jail to outlying facilities from the city. I think it's going to take a little more time and deserve more time.
Right. But what would still the reason, what's the reason for it?
Well, there are a couple things in this plan that the board's already started to work on. And I think you want to start working on this, continue to work on for the remainder of this fiscal year at least. The Veterans Hall improvements, for example, what am I missing here? There's $50,000 in there for approved projects, and those escape me right now, but the board put $50,000 in there for some projects that are already there. I guess that would be the only real reason to do that.
If I could add a commentary, since there are a lot of people who are very knowledgeable experts at asserting what has been the case. Back when the CEO's position was created back in the mid-late 80s, I was not on the board at the time. But when I returned to the board and the first CEO departed not too long after that, that was when Mr. Bixby was hired, and he was the one that really defined and shaped that office through the 90s, and I think he was there for a little over 10 years. He basically restructured the way the CAO's office, after it had been initially set up and was established, and in that he delegated to the CAO under the ordinance. So the requirement for a capital improvement plan basically is a county-defined requirement. That was something that Mr. Bixby, and he took that very seriously. I recall from that era. He was very organized, he had a number of things that he wanted to do. The odds and ends of buildings that we've got scattered around, not only the community here in Susanville, but throughout the county, was something that he wanted to look at, the efficiency of. You've got heating costs, you've got all kinds of utilities, you've got maintenance. The very issues that were dealt with that one stop down in Hurlong. That was the center focus. He took and modernized the way we manage our fleet in terms of capitalizing it and spending it and having the fund to be able to buy new vehicles. He was the one that brought that to bear, working with the sheriff at the time. So that was, as an administrator, he made that, this was part of it. And now that we have under the budgeting requirements under the GASB rules, the Government Accounting Standards Bureau, in terms of quantifying what are potential liabilities that we have, you know, not immediately, but here in the near future, that's gonna have to be something that's gonna have to be quantified and put in place as it relates to our budget. So there's already a requirement that whatever your long-range planning is needs to be, you know, fundamentally incorporated within the long-term budgeting process. So the seeds for this particular document here